Welcome to 30 Minute Theology. I am Olu Ashako, and tonight we are discussing women in leadership, specifically within spiritual leadership, within the church, within the body of Christ. Can women lead? Does God have a place for them to lead? And not just leading women, but leading all sexes. Before we jump into that, let's finish out Judges chapter 3 with the last verse, which says, After Ehud, Shamgar, son of Anath, rescued Israel, he once killed 600 Philistines with an ox goad. And that's it. That's all that uh, the Bible has to say about this judge, Shamgar. Even though he is limited to one verse, there's a lot to unpack in that verse. He was the son of Anath, and Anath is derived from a root that means to answer or to sing. So the son of the one who answers is the one who comes to deliver Israel from their oppressor. Now, Shamgar will come back up in our study next week. So it's important to know that sometimes the judges overlap. It's not strictly linear. It's not one ends and then another ends and then another ends. Again, they kind of overlap. He came to or I should say his claim to fame was that he killed 600 Philistines with an ox goad, which you see a number of them pictured on screen. Now, it was a long stick, a pole, about 8 feet long, and it would have, if it was wood, it was just sharpened on the end of it, or it may have a spike or something metal on the end. The Hebrew word for goad means to learn or to teach. So it's interesting how the Lord works things out, that he used something that means to learn or to teach, being Shamgar, used that to deliver the Israelites who were in bondage to the Philistines. The goad encourages ox to work, to keep going on the path that's laid out by their master. The tool is a symbol of guidance and discipline. And this is what he uses to kill 600 people, a tool that keeps things on path, a tool that straightens out things, that ensures that you're going the right way. The deliverer who was bringing them back to God used a tool that keeps you straight, that gets you right, that encourages you to go on and to move. This is what he used. It's also important to know that he used what he had available. And often we're waiting to have this perfect scenario and have these things in order. And, I've got to have this thing and I've got to have that thing. And when I get those things, then I can go forward and I can move and I can do what God has for me to do. Use what you have. If he's given you something, if he has promised you something, if he's giving you direction, go. He will provide whatever it is that you need to fulfill that thing. Now, if he's saying get prepared and gather these things, that's a different story. But if he's giving you direction, use what you have and look around and see what it is that you do have and go and get glory for the master by doing what it is that he directs you to do. All right, let's go into Judges chapter 4. And verses 1 through 3 says, After Ehud's death, the Israelites did again evil, or I should say, again did evil in the Lord's sight. So the Lord turned them over to King Jabin of Hazor, a Canaanite king. The commander of his army was Sisera, who lived in Harosheth Haggaion. I'm sure I murdered that. Sisera, who had 900 iron chariots, ruthlessly oppressed the Israelites for 20 years. Then the people of Israel cried out to the Lord for help. So after Ehud's death, this is what took place. And we just read with Shamgar that he came after Ehud as well. So again, you see that these things can overlap. What's really interesting about this specific portion of the passage is that they were oppressed, being the Israelites, for 40 years. I'm not 40, 20 years. 20 years they were oppressed before they said, hey, you know what? Why don't we cry out to God? Why don't we turn back to the one that we know delivered us in the past, the one who delivered our ancestors, who brought them out of Egypt into this land that we live in now. It took them a while. Better for it to take a while and them still do it than for it to be all that time and they stay in their sins, stay in their ways. Now, chariots are precursors to tanks. And as you study the Bible, and specifically the exodus of Israel out of Egypt and into Canaan, as they began to take hold of Canaan, Judah, which is the one who went first, that was the group that went first, they had issues with driving out the Philistines because they had iron chariots. See, most chariots are made of wood. So having iron ones was much more formidable. The king, King Jabin, was the enemy, but it was his commander, Sisera, who was the instrument used to subdue and to oppress the children of Israel. And that then made Sisera the focal point because of his cruelty. Let's go into verses 4 and 5. Deborah, the wife of Lapidoth, was a prophet who was judging Israel at that time. She would sit under the palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim, and the Israelites would go to her for judgment. Palm trees were really rare in this region, so the fact that she had one was pretty significant. You know, you didn't just see them scattered across the landscape of Israel and of the place where she was. Now, was she sitting under the palm tree? Possibly. It could be that her and her husband's house was under that tree. Either way it goes, that tree was synonymous with Deborah. And this is where she would sit and where she would provide judgment for Israel. And she was an old school judge, like Moses and the ones that he set up to advise the nation, as Jethro, his father in law, instructed him to do, or I should say, he encouraged him to do. Jethro was a Midianite, and Midian is a son of Abraham, we know of Abraham, but we think of his children as being the ones who descended through Isaac because Isaac was a child of promise. But we know that he had Ishmael before Isaac, and Midian was born to his second wife, Keturah, who he took after Sarah passed. It explains why Jethro, who was a priest, how he could be a priest is because he had knowledge of Yahweh. He came from the same lineage as the Israelites came from. Keep this in mind as we run into Jethro later on in today's lesson and Midian as we continue to study the book of Judges. All right, verses 6 and 7. Let us read that. One day, she sent for Barak, son of Abinoam, who lived in Kadesh in the land of Naphtali. She said to him, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, commands you. Call out 10,000 warriors from the tribes of Naphtali and Zebulun at Mount Tabor. And I will call out Sisera, commander of Jabin's army, along with his chariots and warriors to the Kishon River. There I will give you victory over him. Let's go back just a moment to look at where Deborah would judge from, where she ruled from. She lived in a place that was between Bethel and Ramah. So right in this area of the image on the right. This was in the hill country of Ephraim. If you look at the image on the left, you see that Ephraim is kind of in the middle of Israel, and Bethel and Ramah is somewhat like in the middle or towards the lower part of Ephraim, but still, she's sitting in the middle of the nation, making it easy for all of the tribes to come and get direction from God through her. The Lord instructed her, and she did call for Barak to come, and she gave him the instructions regarding going about and delivering Israel from their oppressor, being King Jabin. She said, take 10,000 people from Naphtali and Zebulun. On the image on the left, you see that Naphtali is right up top in the orange. Right below it in the red is Zebulun. So it makes sense that because Barak was of the tribe of Naphtali, that he will call for warriors within his own tribe. And it also makes sense that the Lord would have him call for the warriors of Zebulun because they were so close to one another. And it's highly probable that in the past they fought together to protect and or to gain land. Barak is derived of a Hebrew word meaning lightning or flash of light. And that could symbolize the swiftness of the power and the divine intervention that God gave to him. He was the son of Abinoam of Kadesh. Kadesh was a city of refuge in Naphtali, which is where he was from. Sometimes God will call you into a fight with your enemy. In this case, he did. He told Deborah to tell Barak, hey, go out to the place that I tell you. And from there, I will bring out Sisera and you all will fight each other. We're doing it in the Kishon or near the Kishon River. Know that again, the Lord may call you to that and may call out your enemy from time to time. Sometimes a fight doesn't just come to you. Sometimes God calls for you to fight and calls your enemy to fight. Know that if he's calling for it, he's got a reason and a plan for everything. Let's go to verses 8 and 10, or 8 through 10. Barak told her, I will go if you go with me. It's kind of hard to see underneath the StreamYard overlay, but yeah, I will go if you go with me. Very well, she replied, I will go, but you will receive no honor in this venture. For the Lord's victory over Sisera will be at the hands of a woman. So Deborah went with Barak to Kadesh. At Kadesh, Barak called together the tribes of Zebulun and Naphtali, and 10,000 warriors went up with him. Deborah also went with him. So Deborah went back to his home town, where he then mustered the troops to go and fight on behalf of the Lord to deliver the people of Israel from Jabin. When God calls you to fight, you don't need to be afraid. Know that he's with you and he's going to give you the victory. Even as you're going to fight, sometimes you take losses in those fights. And that can cause you to think that maybe God didn't say to do it. But if he said go, he's going to provide the victory. Doesn't mean that you won't be hurt. Doesn't mean that you may not come out of it changed. But ultimately, he will give you the victory. It is important to get clear direction from him. Know that it's him saying it. But when you get that direction, follow him. Again, he organized and he fought. He mustered the troops, and he's the one who was out on the battlefield. but he didn't get the honor that goes along with defeating the enemy. It reminds me of the Juice Ball era, which is why you see this picture of Mark McGuire and Sammy Sosa. They were battling it out, trying to break Roger Maris's record back in the late 90s. And ultimately, McGuire did with 70 home runs, which is, I think, two more than the record. But he didn't get the credit because of the steroid allegations. You can forfeit God's plan by moving in your own comfort. If he called you to it, he'll equip you for it. He doesn't fail, so he's not calling you to fail. We fail when we stray from what God has said to do. Here's a little different angle on this as well, though. Even though he was not going to get the credit, being Barak, for the victory over Sisera, he was more concerned about getting the victory than he was with getting the praise. For her to say that a woman is going to get the praise for it, it should have stung based on the way that things were set up during that time. Women held a very low place in society. However, that's who was going to get the victory. He was humble enough, though, to say, I don't need the recognition that goes along with it. I don't need whatever fame or glory that comes from it. I need the victory. Here they are with 900 iron chariots. We need to win. So to quote Malcolm X, he, by any means necessary, I need the win. I don't care about the glory. I care about us having victory and being free. So again, just a different angle versus what most people would think when you look at the fact that he, being a man, was not going to get the victory. He wasn't wasn't going to get the glory. He wasn't concerned about the glory. He was concerned about the outcome. And it will behoove us to have that same kind of spirit where it doesn't matter who gets the credit for it. Does God get the glory? Is his will done? That should be our focus. And we should be willing to do whatever it takes to get that. Verses 11 through 13. Now, Heber the Kenite, a descendant of Moses' brother-in-law, Hobab, had moved away from the other members of his tribe and pitched his tent by the oak of Zananaim. Yeah, I'm sure I nailed that one too. Near Kadesh, which again was a city where Barak was from and where he mustered the army. When Sisera was told that Barak, son of Abinoam, had gone up to Mount Tabor, he called for all 900 of his iron chariots and all of his warriors, and they marched from Harosheth Hagoyim to the Kishon River. So Deborah, called for the men to come together, and or I should say, she gave that instruction to Barak, and she went with him, and Sisera got word, and then he started going to the place that God said that he would draw him out to. I have a picture of an oak tree here because, again, it was near an oak tree that that Heber, who was a descendant of Hobab, again, Hobab being Moses' brother-in-law, that makes him a Midianite, and specifically the descendants of Hobab were considered the Kenites. When Israel was leaving Egypt and going into the promised land, Moses encouraged and was able to get Hobab to go with him, because it's like, look, you know the land, you know kind of where we're going, and you can help us, and God is going to bless us when we get there. Like, we're going to get stuff and we will share those things with you. So though the Kenites were not members of the tribe of Israel, or I should say, of the people of Israel. They were Israel adjacent because they were there with him, which is the reason why where not Hobab, where Heber had his tent pitched was important because he wasn't with all the other Kenites, which more than likely were with or at least near Israel. He was out in a different place. Okay, let us go over verses 14 and 16. Then Deborah said to Barak, "Get ready. This is the day the Lord will give you victory over Sisera, for the Lord is marching ahead of you." So Barak led his 10,000 warriors down the slopes of Mount Tabor into battle. When Barak attacked, the Lord threw Sisera and the chariots and warriors into a panic. Sisera leaped down from his chariot and escaped on foot. Then Barak chased the chariots and the enemy army all the way from Harosheth Hagoyim, killing all of Sisera's warriors. Not a single one was left alive. The thing that was concerning about King Jabin's army led by Sisera, and part of the reason why they were able to oppress them for 20 years was because of these iron chariots. But when God is fighting for you, it doesn't matter what kinds of weapons the enemy has. And we quote often, no weapon formed against you shall prosper. It's not that the weapon won't form. It's not that the weapon won't be utilized, but the weapon's ultimate goal will not come to pass. And it's interesting that Sisera left his place of um, advantage. He had a military advantage sitting in that chariot. It was a higher position. He could do more damage. He had the covering of the chariot. But those same chariots weren't moving like they were supposed to move. They were turning over and they were becoming an issue. And he jumped and ran out of the place that was supposed to be safe. And it says that Barak and the warriors chased the chariots. How are you chasing stuff that's being pulled by horses on foot? You're able to do that when God is going before you, as he did for Israel. The thing that stood out to me as I was studying this recently is that Deborah is the one who gave the call to arms. She said to Barak, "Get up. This is the day the Lord will give you victory over Sisera." And that's what generals do. Generals give the order to go. So even though she wasn't physically on the battlefield because she went with him, the Lord used her in a capacity as a general to give the marching orders to go and to destroy Sisera and the army of King Jabin. That was so eye-opening to me as I was going through and looking at it again. She's not the one who's there fighting, but generals don't fight. They're the ones that strategize, and they're the ones that call different things out. And she served as a general in this case, being led by God, telling them, "Get up and go and fight." All right, let's keep going. Verses 17 and 18. Meanwhile, Sisera ran to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, because Heber's family was on friendly terms with King Jabin of Hazor. Jael went out to meet Sisera and said to him, "Come into my tent, sir. Come in, don't be afraid." So he went into her tent and she covered him with a blanket. Why would she have a different tent than her husband? Like that just stood out to me. It's like, why she got her own tent? Like, why isn't she in her husband's tent? Why don't they have a tent together? Well, it could be for a number of different reasons. Again, the Kenites were descendants of Abraham, so they more than likely followed the same things and they traveled along with Israel. That's how they got to the place where they were. So likely she had her own tent for, and women would have their own tents for purification, for ritual uncleanliness, for childbirth, and things of that nature. When he came in, she gave him a blanket. She covered him with a blanket. I would think a blanket uh, in the wilderness there in Israel in the Middle East wouldn't be what I was looking for, but we know that blankets are things that provide security and things that provide comfort. And even in the summertime, a lot of us still lay under our blankets. Now, granted, we have air conditioning where they don't, but I'm sure it got pretty cold out there in Israel as well. Verses 19 through 20. Please give me some water, he said. I'm thirsty. So she gave him some milk from a leather bag and covered him again. Stand at the door of the tent, he told her. If anybody comes and asks you if there's anyone here, say no. So she gave him some milk. He asked for water. She gave him milk. Milk nourishes, it has nutrients in it. It's a luxury item. So she gave him more than what he asked for. And she covered him again, once again, providing comfort and security. But when Sisera fell asleep from exhaustion, Jael quietly crept up to him with a hammer and a tent peg in her hand. Then she drove the tent peg through his temple and into the ground, and so he died. When Barak came looking for Sisera, Jael went out to meet him. She said, "Come, and I will show you the man that you're looking for." So he followed her into the tent and found Sisera lying there dead with the tent peg through his temple. She gave him milk, which again has nourishment, it has nutrients. But think about where they were. They were out in the wilderness of Israel. And this was before refrigeration. So, yeah, it was milk, but it wasn't cold milk. Think about being a kid, something that mothers often give to their children when it's time to go to bed is warm milk. He was already exhausted from running, like they say, all the way from the Kishon River to his home town. I'm not going to butcher it again, but in looking at this, they descended, being the children of Israel, down Mount Tabor, which is in the upper portion of the image, down to the Kishon River, which is the blue line underneath. And they went all the way back to his home city here. So it was a long way for him to travel. And through all those travels, again, he was tired. He was exhausted, but he also had been given that warm milk as well as that blanket to lull him to sleep, where she could then kill him. Jael was the one who got the honor, not Deborah. Jael did. Don't assume that you know God's plan when he says what he says. Be open and let him be God. Yes, it was a woman, but it was not necessarily the woman that you would think it would be. All right, verses 23 and 24. So on the day Israel saw God defeat Jabin, on that day, Israel saw God defeat Jabin, the Canaanite king. And from that time on, Israel became stronger and stronger against King Jabin until they finally destroyed him. Who defeated King Jabin? God defeated King Jabin. He used Deborah to call Barak, who then went out to fight. But it was God who defeated King Jabin. We represent those that we serve. And on that day, it says that King Jabin was defeated. Well, King Jabin was still alive. And as we read in verse 24, they got stronger and stronger until they finally took him out. But on that day, when Sisera was killed, is when King Jabin lost to the Israelites. Know that when God is working, sometimes in his working, that things take time, and that's okay. Just go along and let God have his way. Again, it wasn't the Israelites. It wasn't Barak. It wasn't Jael who did the killing that defeated Jabin or that defeated Sisera. It was God who orchestrated the entire thing. All right, last couple. That was the last of Judges chapter 4, but I want to go into Hebrews chapter 13, which speaks about Barak. It says, "How much more do I need to say? It would take me too long to recount the stories of the faith of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, Samuel, and all the prophets. By faith, these people overthrew kingdoms, ruled with justice, and received what God had promised them. They shut up the mouths of lions, quenched the flames of fire, and escaped death by the edge of the sword. Their weakness was turned into strength. They became strong in battle and put whole armies to flight." That's what Barak did, put whole armies to flight. Though he did not get the glory for killing Sisera, that glory went to Jael. He still, by faith, went when Deborah called him. And because of the faith that he had in mustering the troops and going forth and fighting, he's listed in what's considered the Hall of Faith. That's the name that's given to Hebrews chapter 13 because it speaks of all of these different heroes of faith and how their faith caused them to have victorious lives. Barak is listed there as well. That's going to end the lesson for today. The next time we get together, we will be covering Judges chapter 5, which is Deborah's song. Until then, God bless and keep it together.